So bunker shots, to make these as simple as possible, we need three things to be good in the sand. Number one, we need a reasonable point of entry, which is like 1.5 to 2 inches behind the ball. We need a club face that's going to skip or skid through the sand as opposed to dinghy. And we also need enough speed to throw a little bit of sand, out of the bunker. So those are the 1, 2, 3s. So yesterday we talked about the low point of the swing being where your buttons of your shirt are, where your nose is relative to the golf ball. And we also had some strings on the ground that showed us where the middle of our stance was, right? So pretending that we're on the grass, we would have had the ball matching the string. We would have had the string right between our heels. Then we had our shirt buttons or our nose kind of on the forward half of that string or ball line. And then the natural bottom of the swing is going to be on the target side of the ball. So we get ball then turf contact, right? So all we're going to do here is we're just going to move that line 2 inches or so behind the ball, like that. And now, when we put that line right between our heels, and we have our weight forward and our nose or our shirt buttons are on the forward half of the line, now the low point's going to be naturally behind the golf ball. So we don't have to do anything special, we just have to set up to create the low point more behind the ball versus ahead of the ball, right? Relative to alignment, we're just going to aim square. So in sand shots, you may have heard that because the face is open, you got to aim to the left. Well, the thing is that when you have a really lofted club and you open the face and you keep the handle of the club more mid-body versus forward, the loft is really pointing up and along the target line. It's actually not pointing to the right. So you see a lot of modern players setting up very square to their sand shots. And that's a beautiful thing because now the shape of the swing and our idea of the swing is much more similar to the other shots that we're hitting. So a lot of times when people get in the sand, they don't like being in here because they don't practice in here. It's a foreign environment, and now they're doing things that they're uncomfortable doing, and they're doing them only a couple of times around, right? So the more we can create similarities, in our setup relative to other shots, the easier it feels up in our mind, right? So we're going to go ahead and put this line right between our heels. We're going to have a much wider stance here, right? So we talked about chipping and pitching. We were like 1 to 2 club head width. Sand shots are a little bit different. We need to be pretty wide. We're going to have our weight forward. And the way I like to get your weight forward is taking your lead hand and just kind of resting it on top of your lead knee. Imagine that you were winded from running somewhere and you're like, hang on a second, right? Just give me a breather. Just go ahead and rest kind of on your lead knee, and you can see how my weight's forward. And that's also moving my nose and my buttons more forward to that line. When we open the club face, we open the face first, and then we take our grip. A lot of times you'll tell someone to open the face, they take their normal grip and they twist the face open. When you swing, it's going to come back to square, right? And if we're hitting the sand with the leading edge, well, that's the digging edge, so we're going to get too much interaction into the sand as opposed to getting a skipping or skidding effect through the sand. So we're going to take the leading edge, and let's say you're looking at the leading edge and you're saying this is 12 o'clock, that's 6 o'clock. If you're not used to opening the club face, let's just turn the face open to like 2:30. I think that's reasonable. When you watch players on TV, they might open it a lot more, but again, they're comfortable doing that. So let's just go ahead and open the face a little bit, and that'll give us some bounce. Bounce means that the leading edge is above the trailing edge. So just like skipping a stone across a pond, the front edge of the stone can't meet the water first because the stone will go plunk. If the front edge of the stone is up, then you get the skip, 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 right? So we've got the ball a little bit forward of center. We've got our weight forward. We've got the club face a little bit open. Head and handle more neutral. From here, the biggest thing you need to practice is being able to hit this line. If you can hit this line now with some reasonable speed, right, then you're creating some evidence that this would actually work. So the thing that frustrates people is they throw a bunch of balls in the sand, they walk up and try and hit the balls, and they're just whacking these balls around, they're screaming over the green, they're getting buried in the lip. They're like, what's going on? Well, if you can just go ahead and remove the ball for a second, understand what's important, and then start systematically walking this line as we get up to the ball, then we can start seeing some evidence as to whether or not we should give a ball a try. So that last one entered the sand back here. That's going to be a little bit too far behind, because if I hit way back here, the club's going to go into the sand and then out of the sand before it goes beneath the ball.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So low point control, number one, bounce, skipping or skidding, number two, speed, number three. That was a little bit too far forward. That could have been a thin shot, right? So very quickly you'll start to see whether or not you're in the right zip code or not. That would have been a nice one, right? So this is the line. We start back here. We make swings and we walk the line, walk the line, walk the line. It's called the walk the line drill. Sometimes they call it the Johnny Cash drill, because his whole life story is called walk the line, right? Hey, I got my phone on. We're gonna listen to some Johnny Cash, while we practice here, right? So we're gonna walk up, focus on the line, trust the thump, and there's our bunker shot.